Good morning, everyone. Thank you to TAPA for hosting me. Just a bit of a different but semi-related presentation as well. It's more going to focus on a lot of working with the data, a bit of the intelligence behind it, and using it. Metagrated comes from a consultancy that focuses on the risk advisory, but our focus is around technology and deploying it correctly. From time to time, we'll be going to various sites and clients in that, and what we see, a common theme is always a lot of these clients have a lot of this fantastic technology. For example, they've invested millions, or the foreign US office, for example, might have sent through teams to say, well, here, deploy this. What we see very often is that the idea of the foreign home office has a very different impression of what's actually going on the ground. And they're sitting there to say, well, why isn't it working? Or why are you receiving so many alerts? What's going on? Is there a problem with crime in the country? And it's a case of just having to educate them to say, well, this is what we're actually seeing, and this is how we actually work with it. So the focus is going to be, I decided to call it digital tracks in the light of transport forensics, in the light of ANPR as well as AI. A couple keywords and a couple big words out there, but hopefully through this presentation, I'll take you through a bit of it. Also, as Lib mentioned, focusing on the investigative side, I think is quite important, but also bringing it together in terms of the intelligence side and the aggregation function. As you saw in a lot of those presentations, and you also heard from Graham in the beginning earlier, the aggregation of this information is also key. It doesn't help having information downloaded in Excel and then from Google, from crime stats, and then to put it into a PowerPoint. Yeah, okay, fine. So what's that actually going to mean? How do you start predicting it to say, well, bringing it in and making a meaningful drive behind it and making meaningful sense that also affects the operation? From time to time, I'll also sit in a presentation and people, they'll put a great PowerPoint. The security representative, for example, will sit and they'll put a great PowerPoint together to say, well, here are the trends, this is what we're seeing. And then the CSO or the COO or the CEO sits and he'll say, but what does this mean to me? And operationally, how can this be applied? So that's where also some of the advice or just some of those pointers I just want to recount in terms of that. So yes, there is a science to it. And discussing the overview of the traditional transport forensics. So yes, I'm not discounting the fact that there are investigative tools, and those tools assist. So what I'm referring to here is potentially parts of the tracking system, some of the manual license plate recognition systems. Everyone's familiar with it, and this is one of the latest, greatest concepts where people are putting down a lot of license plate recognition cameras. Great. But are those connected to anywhere? Is anybody making sense of it? Or only when there's an incident, is someone logging on and saying, okay, show us yesterday, maybe show us a bit of a pattern. But again, the cameras and the back-end systems have a lot more capability behind it. But importantly is that it's not just about the cameras as well. There are a lot of handheld access control scanners, for example, linking in some cases to warehouse management systems, to SAP. And it's a case of linking all of those together. What we're seeing now, and this is a very exciting space and it's something that we're quite involved in, is that migration from those disparate siloed systems into a common operating platform. And what does that mean? Gone are the days of having to invest hundreds of thousands or millions into developers, for example, to give you a dashboard. You saw earlier, and I'll also show you, the prevalence of the like of a Power BI, for example. There you can take a lot of this information automatically, fetch it from your dispatch system, from the warehouse management system, from the logistics side, potentially overlay crime stats, for example, and then see how that changes the picture that you can start talking. There's another acronym, besides for the ROE, ROI, there's ROSI, Return on Security Investment. And what does that actually mean? And from a technical investment point of view and playing with potentially the guarding deployment at a warehouse or at a particular branch, how that affects the return on that security investment versus that risk. So these are the the conventional methods, and things are moving nicely towards additional and more modern technology. I'm just going to briefly touch on a bit of ANPR or LPR, automatic number plate recognition or license plate recognition. Basically what it is as a vehicle or as a truck is passing a camera, the ability to run what's called OCR, optical character recognition. What we're seeing now is that there's a benefit that these cameras and these systems can actually do vehicle, make, model, color, type recognition. So you're now picking up color, you're picking up, and we've even got various clients that can do truck type, for example, as well. So that's what we're also now automatically classifying. So you're now presenting not just the license plate, but you can now say a truck with a trailer with this combination, this color. But not just that, now there's information scanned from the handheld scanner. So this vehicle arrives at a depot, for example, you're getting the license plate information, but now you're also getting potentially the weighable information, you're getting the driver's information. As Lib referred to in the earlier presentation, a lot of it is obtaining those various data points, but then it's a case of making a lot more sense with it. So coming back to ANPR, the camera collects that information. What we're seeing and what the significance of this is in terms of tracking vehicles. So now you can start saying, well, okay, a truck left the depot and it's arrived at the client's premises at this time. Look at the movement over time. Potentially marry that up with the tracking data, for example, to see, well, they've now deviated or they are expected at this facility at this time, and it's a day later and the vehicle hasn't arrived. The truck hasn't arrived, or the combination of the truck and trailer hasn't arrived, or a different driver. So that's where having those systems, you can now automatically alert and say, but there's a anomaly here. And then also what we're seeing and what I've been mentioning is AI in the ANPR itself. So even if you drive through, and it's something that I make a point, if you drive through here, for example, you'll see there are various cameras stationed throughout the facility, for example. So placing some cameras throughout a facility, throughout a city, a country, now offers you the ability to track the vehicle's movement over a period of time or throughout the facility. So you can see, well, this vehicle arrived. If, as an example, a vendor says, well, there was a delivery and for some reason the truck took a significant amount of time in the yard. Was it a valid reason? He was maybe held up with some paperwork, or was maybe offloading or loading additional stock? So using the technology for that. And also, I just want to touch on that. What we're seeing is that now when it comes to budgeting, you've got the ability to also pass on additional costs to the operational team, to the logistics team, to the vehicle maintenance team as well, that they can now start tracking and saying, well, we're seeing the average movement of this vehicle, so therefore here's a high-use truck or here's a lower-use truck, so therefore operations can benefit from it. Also, another nice thing with LPR is that you're getting a visual confirmation. Very often, when I'm sitting in front of a client, they say, well, what's the difference between tracking telematics information and then LPR? The good thing about LPR is that there's visual confirmation. Nowadays, and one of the major issues that we see is it's easy. You can take off a plate and you can put that onto a different truck. But now, in the light of AI as well as LPR, you can now start saying, did this plate match the actual vehicle, the truck, or there's an exception? But you can now visually see. While opposed to tracking data, I consider a blind alert. And also, anyone can take a device out and put it on a different truck. No one is none the wiser to see, well, it might be put on a different vehicle. It might be thrown out on the side of the road. It might be, as we see very often, put on a decoy vehicle as well, so that everyone rushes to a completely different area. And shame, meantime, here's this Tani who now has a whole police force behind her, thinking that she's now the wanted person. So again, the combination of AI in LPR is quite a nice differentiator. So like I mentioned, but particularly with forensics and touching on where we're seeing AI in modern vehicle forensics, to begin with, how firstly the AI processes data. Gone are the days of needing super fast or huge internet lines. What we're seeing with a lot of, particularly in the logistics transport sector, is in a lot of escort vehicles as well. You now have the ability to take a standard dash cam, for example, and add intelligence to that, particularly for high-value goods as well. Now utilizing the cameras around the truck to run LPR, to say, but we always see this vehicle behind the truck at this location. Is it a known escort vehicle? Or hang on, why is this vehicle behind here? Show us more information and then present that to the real-time GSOC who are now tracking it. So that's one example, but thanks to 4G as well, a control room or a supervisor now has the ability to transmit the information from a truck, but also to log in real time, that if they do see something, can listen in to say, well, what's happening in the cabin? What's being said? Are there certain keywords, or actually see what's going on? Is the driver acting in a strange way, or why has he been stopping, and what's going on around that? Importantly, the enhancements around it and around ANPR are really exciting, and we're seeing a lot of benefits from that. The message to use to look at embracing it, but also conducting a simple audit on site, and not just briefing the installer to say, well, okay, put a ANPR camera down, job done, thank you very much. The intention is to utilize it a lot more. Look at connecting it to the internet, linking it into the various databases, linking it into internal systems, fleet management systems, for example, is a big thing. All too often, we'll go to a site and it's just a case of looking at the manual clipboard, and there's a sheet of paper to say, well, truck XYZ 123 left, and then it's reliant potentially on a supervisor to maybe capture that information. Who knows, he might have gotten a 1 and a 7 mixed up, and then the whole paper trail then falls apart. That's where having a combination, scanners, LPR, linked into different systems can make a serious difference. So we're seeing the merging of ANPR as well as AR. Like I mentioned, it isn't an expensive exercise anymore. It's actually, nowadays, if you look at a lot of the modern video management systems, a lot of access control systems as well, a lot of telematic systems can easily integrate. So don't be put off by just saying, well, our expensive video management system can't really output much information. We're not really going to focus on that. Challenge it, have a look at it. Challenge the CSO within the business as well to say, well, have you considered integrating the LPR, looking at access control, and by access control referring to personal access control as well, looking at facial recognition. That's a big keyword nowadays. Everyone's getting all excited about it. We've seen deployments go right and go wrong as well. Potentially facial recognition within a truck as well. So identifying certain drivers, and also analytics, which is a whole different story behind that in terms of driver analytics as well, is a whole different kettle of fish, but it's quite an exciting space. So what we're seeing firstly is the benefits of the AI, so understanding where and how those feature, but then at the same time, understanding also increased accuracy and also increased cost. Yes, it may cost a little bit more, but feature that in your ROSI calculation and just say, well, potentially look at reducing entry-level gate guard, employing the services of a data analyst, for example, to now work with this data and make meaningful sense of it in a meaningful way, and potentially steal some budget from marketing, maybe from operations as well. Just another interesting one was that a client of ours was able to successfully deploy their upgraded system by drawing on funding from marketing as well as operations. Reason being is that they used LPR cameras in the field to see what their vehicles looked like in the field. So they could then see, but here I've got this truck, and now next second there's a huge scratch or a huge tear along the tarpaulin, but now they can actually see over a period of time, okay, the vehicles are looking good. Send that on to the fleet management team. He'll pay decent money to now see, okay, I see that our vehicles are looking good. Or if a driver reports, at this time, I drove through and somebody took a knife or something and they slashed the whole tarpaulin, we'll say, okay, at 9 o'clock everything seemed fine, 10, 11 o'clock, I see midday something didn't look right in the vehicle in Kempton Park, and you were on the trip there. So therefore, between these two drop-offs, something happened there. So that's where you can also pick that up, but also from a reputational point of view, you can then see what the vehicle looks like. And that can go from courier vehicles up to the large trucks as well. Again, if you've got cameras on the vehicle, great, but now getting those external eyes on it. So that's what we also saw was actually quite a nice value add. Also, another nice benefit of access to other systems is the ability to reference the status of the fleet against the SAP system. So that was an interesting thing as well, because a number of, and I'm sure that a lot of you identify with this, where the vehicles are being pulled over by a cop to say, outstanding, and not a traffic offense. This truck is wanted in a hijacking, therefore, Mr. Truck Driver, thank you very much. And we're going to put you in the back of the vehicle. So another value add is the ability to say, well, get on a daily, on a weekly, a monthly basis, understanding of the entire fleet. So I know within my fleet of 1,000 vehicles, I've got 10 vehicles that are actually wanted on these cases. Here's the station, here's the case number. I can go to those stations and say, show me that information, close the case out, thank you very much, so that there's less chance of those drivers being pulled over. But then also, I know I've got these 10 cases open, this is what I need to address, so that I can see, oh, it's a recent case, let me address it, and it's a case of being proactive versus waiting till the driver calls you or logistics calls you and says, listen, you got to fly down to Kimberley Police Station, there's a driver locked up there or a vehicle has been impounded. As Lib mentioned earlier, it is about networking, and it's a bit of a busy slide. It didn't take out too well, but what I wanted to highlight here is that it's also the gateway between the public-private sector. And as has been mentioned multiple times, it is about those triple Ps, the public-private partnerships. So what you're seeing on this slide here are various entities, both in some cases SAPs, who we work with, and also the SAPs specialist units. So that's what Lib was referring to earlier, is that you're not just speaking to an IO who might initially investigate the case, you're also speaking to the gents from crime intelligence, for example, investigating a specific trend or pattern. But then taking that into the private sector, and I think that's what brings us here, and what also is the major benefit behind TAPA as well, is the ability to network both within the industry, but also within the law enforcement entities. So the likes of Business Against Crime, ICB, there's another entity, Zonke Unicode, who also have the official SAP circulation database and the access into that. So the ability to query those systems and get that information greatly enhances your ability to understand what your overall operation looks like. Again, it's no longer a case of LPR camera logging to Excel and then maybe someone sending a daily report. We had 5 cars pass this or whatever. That can feed into quite a nice dashboard that can then present that and make meaningful data out of it. On the right-hand side also are the different entities, whether it be the motor manufacturer industry, the micro-dotting, rental agencies, all of those feed that into it, and you really get quite a comprehensive information. So I just want to throw out some typical ideas, and just to get your mind going on just what we're seeing in terms of ideas and concepts. So firstly, one of the popular things is a liveness test, and this happens often. The ability to query a database to see, does this vehicle exist? Has it been seen on any cameras, access control systems? Because all too often it happens too late that 2 or 3 weeks later a vehicle is reported missing, but actually has it hit on any gantries, for example? Has it been seen anywhere driving around the country? So, let me head towards Cape Town, or let me maybe go north towards Kimberley, for example, so you can get some information. The breadcrumb, as you started to see, and I'll just show you afterwards a couple more maps in that, it's no longer a point on Google Maps. What's the meaning behind that, but also what's the movement of that over time? So you can then see on day 0, for example, vehicle was seen here. Halfway through day 0, vehicle was seen moving here. Again, you can predict to say, well, okay, they're moving towards Kimberley. Or hang on a second, we can then see that they drove into this facility. So who was the driver? by placing a breadcrumb analysis on this data, you can then look at that movement over a period of time. Are they moving at night? Are they potentially moving sensitive cargo? Why are they moving at night? So with the breadcrumb analysis, you can now start seeing, but okay, this is the normal pattern. Logistics, are you okay with it? Or no, that's a complete anomaly. The vehicle shouldn't be seen at night. And what does it actually look like? Another one is X days before and X days after. So picking an incident or a point of investigation to say, show me where, what, when, where, how the vehicle looked like 5 days before and 5 days after. The truck. So they were taking a specific load, and if you got bigger items, you can then see, well, okay, they were moving this part X days before, or the vehicle, the flatbed was entirely empty. Fine, they were moving down to a different site, or the stock varied over a period of time. We use this quite a lot in the insurance side as well for accident claim investigation. When the person said, I had the accident on the 15th of June, log on and you actually see, well, 10th of June, there was the vehicle, there was that massive dent. What did it look like? Or correlate, okay, fine, so this claim makes sense, don't repudiate it. So it's also used quite a lot for repudiation. The vehicle profile as well. So now linking into other data sets, you can now start seeing, okay, but this vehicle is insured through this company, or if you do have legal automated NATIS access, you can see, well, this is the company that this truck is actually licensed to. So you can then say, well, okay, so that starts to make sense. And as Lib was referring to earlier, as part of that investigation, you now have this information to feed that in. You can say, well, here's the registered driver. What's their ID number or their permit number or the waybill? Marry all that together to see, well, okay, we can see that all of this matched up or there was an exception. In terms of the sighting analysis, there's quite a bit of it available, like I mentioned earlier, looking at the location, seeing, well, where's this vehicle? Was it in a residential suburb? Or, okay, fine, he maybe went past home to go and collect something. Was that authorized? Wasn't it? Was he going past an informant's house? Or was he offloading equipment where he actually shouldn't have been? Patterns. Picking up general driver patterns as well to see, well, this is typically where the vehicle is seen as part of this delivery. Fine, it's expected. Or through putting all of this information into the right system, you can now see, okay, I now understand that he has a normal pattern, and the system can actually alert on those anomalies. Probability is a big thing, and this is where the system is going. Everyone's familiar with this ChatGPT concept, and I don't know if anybody's actually tested taking some telematic data, anonymize it, don't put any sensitive information, but just give it a go, and it's actually fascinating. We run similar models, but in a more secure environment where we'll potentially put multiple data sources, ask the right questions, and it's actually pretty amazing to see what you get back. And it happens in a matter of seconds, when typically it wouldn't happen. It would take a qualified analyst potentially weeks. But more importantly is that you're now getting this qualified information prescriptively. So you can now go back to your team and say, well, based on this information that we're seeing, this is how the operation should change. And this is how we believe parts should be delivered. As part of the escort, or the truck should operate in a certain way. But here's that underlying data. So nowadays, you can actually really make quite a full, meaningful difference. And again, the cost of ChatGPT, you're talking a couple dollars. But importantly, garbage in, garbage out. Present the right information, ask the right questions, the right templates, and you can actually see you get quite a better picture out of that. Recommendations, like I mentioned, and then also supplementary data, bringing it together. So taking in that LPR data, taking in that access control, general crime information for the area as well, and you start building up quite a serious threat assessment. Images and analysis as well, working on some exciting stuff where a default truck layout, as an example, is loaded into the system, and you're now comparing it real time to say, what, those tires didn't match the reference image. So why is there a tire missing in some cases? Why is the stock being laid differently, for example, as well? So either simply comparing a basic image, or you can actually take it as far as comparing it to a real-time image. Also, obviously, depending on what information is available. Like I made mention of their make, model, color type. So just to take you through a couple case studies, and this is the exciting thing where we start to see information happening. Everyone's familiar, or I hope everyone's familiar with the company Vumacam, part of the Vumatel network. They're making significant inroads in terms of the placement of the cameras, but also access to a lot of the data. A lot of the stats, yes, a lot of it is marketing or whatever, but what we do is we start to use this as an initial indication. To just, yes, the numbers are actually high, but break it down and actually look at the breakdown of those crimes, for example, the types of crimes. Or if you reach out to them, chances are that you can get more specific information. Importantly, Vumacam isn't the be-all and end-all. There are other entities around the country, the likes of the Navix, there's Sniper, there's Gatebook, there's a number of entities, and also people who also feed into this information. But I'm just highlighting here the benefits behind it, and they are quite advanced in terms of their analytics and the LPR. Again, having a look here, from getting the information, the ability to then act on it. And that's where things are going now as well. So yes, who's getting those alerts? What are they doing with it? And also importantly, how are they able to get to the scene where the vehicle is? What we see very often is that potentially a supervisor or a manager later that night or at the end of the week is going through his report and says, that was the one case. By that time, the car or the truckload is completely empty. So again, the timelessness of these alerts is absolutely key, so that the relevant teams have the ability. If it's in Joburg, great. Get the teams who can go to site and interact, to the earlier discussion as well, the right teams. You definitely don't want to send a computer person or like an IT person into a gunfight. Having the correct people, because as has been mentioned, a lot of these syndicates mean serious business. And as tempting as it may be to just get in a car and go and follow a potential suspect, there are ramifications with it, significant ramifications. So what you're seeing here is a daily example, and we see a significant amount where providing the right alert to the right people can affect the arrest. But again, a couple keywords that I mentioned there: the right alerts to the right people, so that they can act on them. Coming onto the mapping and the information behind it, again, it's not just a standard Google Maps pin here, and I'll dig deeper into this, but this is the start of the breadcrumbing and the analytics and the route analytics that I was moving to. So as a start, working with a heat map, but the different pin colors mean different things as well. So red might mean an older alert. Green is a more current alert within the last hour. So starting with that, but then taking it further into looking at a map at a geographic area. That might be a plant, a facility, a region, for example, but then adding, importantly, the image on the left. So once you get the map itself, you then have the ability to say, well, okay, I now can see what this looks like, but let me see what the vehicles themselves look like. And it can be something as simple as a thumbnail report, but on the right, you can see the different colored pins. On the vehicle, on the left, you can see the actual vehicle itself. But now marry it together, as you mouse over it, or generating a report like this, for example, you can now start seeing what the vehicle looks like. Importantly, was the truck being followed? What did it look like when it was being followed, and the different angles? Because of the LPR cameras nowadays, you can actually start to get quite a good 360 image of the vehicle as well, as it's read as it goes around a city, for example, or travels on streets. This is some of the make, model, color, type analytics. So again, you can't really see it too well, but there's a vehicle color, which is indicated there, vehicle type. So it's got the ability to actually break down truck, SUV, 4x4, sedan, and then it goes into make, model, color, type. So you can now say, show me all the white Fords, STs, for example. And then this report can then map that, for example, and then you can compare it in there. So that's where just an idea in terms of the make, model, color, type. Mobile technology, also the next latest, greatest, and the next frontier. All too often, our teams sit in vehicles and then they're not able to take a laptop out, boot it up on a screen or whatever. So a lot of mobile technology is available, and this is the one app that I was referring to earlier. But now you can start seeing those specific pins. Click on it, shows you the image, connecting to external databases, and you can now start seeing, well, here's potentially the victim's vehicle, here's the follow vehicle, here's the truck, what was before, what was after it in that area. So this is an actual app. It's not as if it's staged. Actual app, and just giving you an idea of how all this technology comes through. And this actually works pretty well, particularly for your escort or your delivery vehicles as well, working off the dash cam information as well. Again, just giving you an example of what it looks like real time while driving it on South African plates. So that as well, all too often, people say, well, we got the system from Lithuania, but the Lithuanian plates look very different to a South African plate, for example. So that's why also a big thing when asking the vendors is that you got to check that they've got experience with South African plates and in the South African environment. Again, just another nice quick summary, pulling up the vehicles, and this feeds up into a report, but into a real-time dashboard. Access control information. So this is from the access control scanner, showing the combination of the driver and the vehicle. Importantly, POPI features, and that's where is a big thing. Being compliant within PAPA is very, very important as well. Disclosure of the information, retention of the information is also quite an important point. There, within a dashboard as well, within a control room environment, the ability just to show the different alerts on a map, the vehicle history, and the make, model, color, type. So the end result, to close off, is obviously profiling. It's a case of saying, well, here's the vehicle of interest. What's the surrounding information? The driver, the dash cam, the telematic information. Then at the same time, suspect association, whether it's additional vehicles, additional people, predictive analytics to say, well, send that on to the team, but then prescriptive analytics as well, telling the team as well, based on this information, this is what you should be doing. This, based on the value, needs this type of escort, and this is, here's the vehicle, or that's what it needs. Also, importantly, demonstrating the customer value. So to show that here's the value that you can actually see from it and you can derive from it. It's not another system which is costing some more money, and then everyone questions what's the point behind it. So again, just some of the challenges that we're just seeing. Obviously, AI biases. AI is not perfect. You do get the misreads, you do get the false alerts. So it's a case of working through those, and also technical limitations as well as the data privacy laws as well need to be taken into account. So ethical, legal implications, like I mentioned, POPI, managing the information, drivers, camera information, releasing it to entities, all of that. And it's a balancing act, disclosing the correct information to the correct people. The road ahead, obviously predicting in terms of where this is going is a very exciting space, and there's a lot of opportunity behind it, and the potential advancements as well as areas of research are points that we're working on quite a bit. So just wanted to close off with that, and there are my details. So any questions? Anyone disagree with what I've said? Anyone want to challenge it? I'm sitting over there. Please.
Just one question. Now seeing the QR code there on the screen, as everybody know, on the news there was some information that Gauteng is going to change their number plate system.
Yeah.
And they're going to put a QR code on that. Dangerous, don't you think? Putting your personal information on a number plate so that people can just scan it.
Yeah. So yeah, and also as Torsten mentioned in the beginning, you can now go up to the car. The information that gets disclosed is obviously key. I'm curious to see if it gets as far as actually producing the plates, but it has raised a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
So it is a valid concern.
Very concerning.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I was saying regarding the tools that you mentioned, Vamacam, other companies that have the goal is to share information. Whenever we are in the era of so much information, and an example of streaming companies, we have now 6, 10. It's so much information. How can we create something common? How can we create an environment or a system that everyone can access? Because now, okay, Vamacam is owned by one company and another one by another company. How can we create something common? How can we reach something that, okay, in the end, if it's for profit, but it's
fair, yeah. So it's a valid point, and what we see is there are a lot of commercial companies that offer it to varying degrees. There are 2, possibly 3 entities. Besides for within TAPA as well, I think that's a sharing, and I think something which can be considered more potentially real-time incident-based. But the 3 entities kind of in the market currently between Business Against Crime, Zonke Unicode, and ICB. Between those three entities, they are sitting, in my opinion, correctly. In that they are firstly the triple P, the interface to government, to the law enforcement, but to the sector as well, whether it's on the logistics side or insurance side. So I think it's a case of engaging with those entities. Because to your point, Vubacam is great in Gauteng, for example, but then you go to KZN, you go to Bloem, and there's nothing going on there. Those entities, but engaging with those 3 entities. Each of them, I believe, is getting it right to a different extent. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you very much. Are you still going to be available after this?
Yeah.
Okay, so Michael will be available if there's any more questions afterwards. We're slightly behind, so I'm going to just jump in immediately with the